No Six Nations games this weekend, but URC is back. My name's Mark. Let's talk rugby. Round 14 of the URC, so we're not going to see, a lot of the internationals for the Six Nations who are obviously away with their national squads at the moment. But we do have, we have some South African derbies to look forward to. But also this, even though it's going to be players that maybe wouldn't be starting week in, week out, or wouldn't be in the 23 week in, week out playing for a lot of the teams, it still could be one of the most impactful weekends of rugby in the URC, certainly in the regular season. And the reason for that is because teams can really make a move here. Who's going to cope best without their international players? And if you can get a win here, and say you're one of those teams that is kind of on the cusp of the knockout stages, or on the cusp of maybe getting a home quarterfinal, then a win here really puts you up, in good stead for that, because it could be the difference between going into the final round of games knowing that you've already secured that, home advantage, or that you're already, in the knockout stages. Or on the flip side, if you lose this weekend, you could be going into that set of games needing maybe a bonus point win and other results to go your way as well. So winning this weekend could have a big, impact on a lot of teams' season, especially when you look at the table, and we'll have a closer look later. But from 5th down to 11th, there's just 10 points between them. So that's like 2 bonus point wins. Pick up a bonus point win this weekend, and that team that you're trying to hunt down doesn't. Suddenly the gap doesn't seem insurmountable anymore. And then even at the top of the table, other than Leinster, really, you've got the likes of Ulster, Bulls, Glasgow, and potentially Munster as well, all fighting out for those final 2 home spots, with probably Leinster and the Stormers. So there's a lot to play for this weekend. And also we're going to see a lot of players who in the future are going to be, potential big stars for their teams, either in the URC or maybe internationally in a few years' time as well. So it's normally I find these kind of ones, and kind of the earlier rounds as well, when maybe the internationals are off. It's a good time to kind of spot the up and coming players, because talent will stand out even if they're young. But let's get into the games that we have this weekend. So on Friday, first off, we have Munster versus Ospreys. So this is 6th versus 11th. So if Ospreys win this one, or if they could even win with a bonus point, then they cut the gap to Munster to either 2 or 3 points. And suddenly, they're down in 11th, but suddenly they're right in the mix for the playoff spots. In terms of, the way the 2 teams have been going, Munster really have hit a nice vein of form. They had a poor start to the season. By their standards, they're really turning it around at the moment. But Ospreys are the same as well. Ospreys had a pretty dire start to the season, but they've won 3 of the last 4 games. Munster have won 5 of the last 6. Also, we have the kind of side story of Joey Carby having been left out of the Irish Six Nations squad. Really tore up the last time we played for Munster in the URC, kind of in almost like reacting to being left out, and very positively as well. So expect him to be playing well. Then you've got people like possibly Peter O'Donoghue. You got Simon Zebo in there. You got Fekatoa, who is potentially leaving at the end, or he is, I think, leaving at the end of the season, right? But like, you've still got decent players, and the Ospreys kind of are fairly similar in terms of like, there are going to be some players in there who are maybe veterans who don't get into the Welsh squad anymore, that kind of thing. So it's going to be a fairly exciting game between those two. But I think home advantage and the fact that Carby is something to prove, plus we have like Munster on such a good run anyway. I think Munster are going to take that one out. Also on Friday, then we have Glasgow Warriors versus Ulster. So Glasgow have been, on a great run of form. Like, they've won 7 of the last 8 games. This is 5th versus 3rd. And then like Ulster early on in the season, you probably would have tipped them to win this one. But like, there over December, their form really fell off a cliff. Like, they couldn't buy a win for love nor money. They have kind of turned that around a bit, and I expect them to be certainly more competitive in this one. In my Super Brew, I've gone for Ulster by 7, but I think that's maybe just a bit of Irish bias there. Probably would, if I was just thinking with my head, it probably would tip towards Glasgow instead. But Ulster will have they're going to have a lot of their first choice, especially in the backs. Like, they're still going to have the likes of Cooney, Burns is going to be available. You got Balakoon, McElroy will probably be in the team as well. Lowry there too. So a lot of really good players in there, exciting players too. So, and Glasgow love to run the ball as well. So I think that's going to be possibly a high-scoring affair, with Glasgow probably shading them in the end there. But if Glasgow could win that, suddenly, if they actually won with a bonus point and denied Ulster any points at all, they would actually leapfrog them in the table. That's how close it's gotten because of Munster's kind of loss of form. Then into the Saturday games, then we have the South African derbies. So we got, first of all, the Lions versus the Sharks. So that one, I think, the Lions have actually been better away from home. This is 13th versus 7th. So Lions have actually been better away from home than at home. So being at home for this one, not necessarily going to be, a great thing for them in terms of, like, they're on a run of, 4 defeats in a row, right? And then the Sharks, a little bit of mixed form for them. They've won 5 of the last 8 for them. Like, Lions only 2 of the last 8. So probably, going towards the Sharks there. Not sure in terms of what's going to happen with the South African players. They obviously were the last time the Stormers were playing. The Stormers were playing the Sharks, right? That game that kind of got called off earlier on in the season. And we didn't see any of the Springboks in that. So hoping we see some Springboks this weekend. Not quite sure about that, honestly. But again, I'd probably tip the Sharks for this one. Then we have the other South African derby. So we've got the Bulls versus the Stormers. So this one is 4th versus 2nd. So Bulls kind of, they were up there with the Stormers earlier on in the season, had a bit of a rough patch and like they've won one of the last four, but they have won, was it four of the last seven or something like that, that they've won. So they were on a decent run until they kind of hit a sticky patch. Stormers, they won the last game, but they lost the two before that as well. Saw like that gap to Leinster just opening up to almost a chasm at this stage. It's got to be tough, I think, this one. Like Stormers, obviously, very attack-minded team. Bulls, though, do have that all-round game as well. Probably maybe home advantage was shaded for the Bulls. And if they do win that, then it's going to get very interesting at the top of the table, because then, suddenly the Stormers gap down to the Bulls and Ulster and maybe even Glasgow if they win, it is almost evaporated. Like they're only going to have like the one win in hand over those teams. So yeah, another exciting game at the weekend. And again, as I said, there's a lot to play for this weekend. Then we have also Zebre versus Connacht. So Zebre, bottom of the table, winless all season. They've put some decent performances together, but they just haven't had enough to get over the line in any of their games. Connacht coming to town, a bit of mixed form for them. They have won their last two, though. And, Connacht they do have some players involved with Ireland, but they probably, have more of their first team available than certainly the likes of Munster or Leinster do at the moment. So probably going to send over a strong team over there, and probably going to have a little bit too much for Zebre, but Zebre should be kind of competitive. They're almost like they kind of reached that stage of being similar to the way Italy used to be, which was like they'd stay in the game for about 60 minutes and then fall off towards the end. So kind of expect Connacht to come through and win that one in the end. Zebre don't have to look at their form. It's just the whole season played 13-1-0. Connacht, they've won about half of the games this season, I think, and they've won about half of the last 8 or so, 4 in the last 7 at least, for them. Then also we have Scarlets versus Edinburgh. So I think this is another fairly exciting one, because you have Scarlets there down in 14th place, really have been struggling this season, but they have been accumulating points, and they've managed to close the gap up on the Lions and Cardiff ahead of them, actually not too far behind the Ospreys either. So if they could put a run together for the end of the season, they could actually qualify for the next season's Champions Cup as the top Welsh team, winning the Welsh Shield. Not sure about making the knockout stages. It would have to be a really good run, I think, if they were to do that. But then you've got Edinburgh there, who are sitting in 9th place. They're just outside the knockout, the top 8 for the knockout rounds. So a lot for them, and I think they're really going to go for this one, because they probably see Scarlets away as one of the more winnable away games for them in their run-in. So, it's one of those things that if they can win here, then they go into that final run of games potentially in a spot for the knockout stages, rather than still outside trying to break in. But Scarlets, as I said, they've been in decent form. They've won the last 3 on the bounce. Before that, not looking so good. Before that, it had been a long time since they won But coming into this, at least in decent form. Edinburgh, not so much. Edinburgh have only won one of the last 6 games. So if they are going to target this one, some of them have been close, in fairness for them, but still, they're going to have to rediscover their run in rugby, I think, for that one. Then we also have Cardiff versus Benetton. So this is another one where, like, you've got Benetton sitting up there in 8th place, Cardiff in 11th, in 12th. Cardiff have home advantage for this one, but they've been in pretty poor form. They've lost the last 3 in the URC and only won 2 of the last 7. Benetton, on the other hand, they did lose the last one out, but they won 3 in the bounce before that, and they've won 4 of the last 7, but still don't really travel all that well. So home advantage might actually count in Cardiff's favour here in this one a little bit more than maybe against a tougher team. So probably expecting Cardiff to win that one. And then if Benetton do lose, then they're almost certainly going to get overtaken and drop out of the spots for the knockout stages. Then finally, the last game we have is Leinster versus Dragons. So this is like first all-conquering 13 from 13 Leinster versus the Dragons, who are down at 15th. They had a patch there after who was it? It's not what's the guy's name? It's not Dai Young. Dai Young is Cardiff, right? I can't think of his name, but it's there in my brain. It just won't come out. But when they changed coaches and he took over, they had like a period there where they were playing very well. They were also picking up points. The likes of Rio Dyer obviously benefited from that, getting into the Welsh team on the back of that. But recently, form hasn't been great. They've lost the last 6 on the bounce in the URC, and they've only now won 3 so far this season. And they desperately need a win, but if they pull a win off here, like, that would be absolutely amazing. Because like that Leinster team, obviously, I think that Leinster had some like 22 players called up for the Ireland training squad for the Six Nations. I think it was something around that anyway. But then you're still going to have like the likes of Harry Byrne there. So that's Ross's younger brother. Then like you've got people like Scott Penny, Rhys Ruddock, you got Maloney there. There's plenty of really good players still around at Leinster. And Leinster, we see it year in, year out now, where lots of players missing and they just bring up another gem. The guys who come up from like the wider squad or even like from the academy, the training squad, they just seem to fit in seamlessly all the time. So Dragons really up against that, tipping Leinster for probably a very big win there. Now, before we finish, let's just have a quick look at the standings. So we have Leinster leading the way on 61 points. They're getting very close to the point where it will be mathematically impossible to catch them. Now, I don't think anyone is going to catch them for first place, but, a couple more rounds, I think, and it will just be a done deal that they are number 1 seeds. They've got the Stormers in second, so that's a really big game for them this weekend to make sure that they keep that back gap down to Ulster in third. We got the Bulls in fourth, who obviously will be looking to make ground. Same for Glasgow in fifth, looking to beat Ulster to make ground on them as well. Munster in sixth, Sharks in seventh, Benetton in eighth. So that's at the moment the qualifiers for the knockout stages. Then just outside we have Edinburgh in ninth, Connacht in 10th, Ospreys 11th, Cardiff in 12th, you can see how tight that is. Like, Benetton down to Cardiff, so 8 down to 11, or 8 down to 12, sorry. That's basically like 5 points is a bonus point win, right? And that's what I'm talking about. This weekend could have such an impact on how things finish up. We've then got the Lions in 13th, Scarlets 14th, Dragons at 15th, and then Zebre prop up the table down in 16th place. So I will be covering some of the games this weekend, so look out for those videos. And then probably on, I'd imagine it's going to be either Monday or Tuesday, I'll do a wrap up of the round, and then another look at how the table is looking as well.